where it all began, people. Alright, so today we're gonna be going through where I originally started, because I want to be clear about something. A lot of people think that you need to have a certain setup, you need to have a certain environment, you need to have just the quote-unquote bells and whistles or whatever it is, you know, as far as like thinking that you need certain aesthetics or assets or things to get your journey started in whatever it is that you're trying to do. As you can see right here, this is legitimately the neighborhood that it all began with, ForneverWorld. And if you see behind me that there's that giant building, that thing didn't even exist when I lived here. It was literally just an empty, deserted field. And on top of that, to get through here, literally it's behind the freaking graveyard. So literally all the stuff that you saw in the early content, all the stuff that you saw in the early videos was all literally in this neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? So while back in those times, you know, it was a little bit different, I was living here, you know what I'm saying? This is where a lot of things started. In fact, if you follow my music, in the Day One's video, this is the neighborhood that we did the music video for. So, you know, every now and then I like to come back, see what the neighborhood is looking like, see what's going on in here. And I guess it's just an interesting aspect I felt to bring you guys along, so you guys could see where it all started, you know what I'm saying? As long as you got yourself, as long as you do your best and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, you could get anything done, anything in your mind, you know what I'm saying? Just before I even started doing the ForneverWorld stuff, I lived here in this apartment complex that you can see behind me. And I want to say after a bit, because lived here with my sister, the building had burned down at some given point. Like, yo, it's completely gone, but they reconstructed it and it's back. But right here, before I did the ForneverWorld stuff, this is where I was at. I actually had started my very first channel here. I was just like showing DVD box sets like Dragon Ball and stuff like that. I was just basically like, you know, doing unboxings, so to speak, but didn't really go that far with that one or whatnot. And then eventually, after a certain point, because, you know, you're living with people, squabbling all the time, you're like, yo, I need to get my own. So eventually got up out of here, but didn't really go too far, because then eventually, after a certain point of living there, I moved a little bit over here, because honestly it was a toxic environment in those days, just being honest. Like, it was one of the reasons why I really even kind of gravitated towards doing the YouTube stuff, because when you're realizing like, yo dog, like at that time, those days, I was house sitting so that people could make trips to like out-of-state trips and stuff like that. You know, if you know, you know, them Florida vibes and all that stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I was house sitting and doing that aspect or whatnot while people were doing that, and I ain't gonna lie, I was just kind of like, yo, that isn't me, you know what I'm saying? That's not me. But as you can see right here, this was the building right here where it all began. Apartment 3, I want to say it was maybe 3C. When I filmed Day One's video, I was at the wrong floor, so I had to correct that real quick. And sitting on the stoop really isn't me either, I'm gonna just be honest with you. But this is where it all began. Music I was doing even before that, but as far as the anime stuff goes, it was right here. And I ain't gonna lie, it used to be hectic, because when I used to come in and out of this joint, it used to be like 50 million people sitting on the stoops here, and 50 million people sitting on the stoops in this apartment right here. And there used to be a lot of people just in general. And especially when you're just trying to come in and out like me, I don't like to be, you know, as far as like, if it ain't a crowd that and particularly I rock with, that isn't something, you know, an environment. Like, I like to make sure I'm in the environments that I want to be in. On top of the fact that, bro, I'm living in, you know, the projects, essentially South Park apartments, you know what I'm saying? So it was really, really hectic. And this right here is another memory of mine. I'm gonna show you out here in a second, because I was here for quite a few years. Funny enough, it wasn't until literally like maybe a month or two before the Naruto manga ended, and then like it was right before I knew that it was ending that we started looking at different spots or whatnot to just get up out of here. Because see this parking lot right here, at that particular point, you know, I had a few dollars, you know what I'm saying, and I had a few cars here, and haters, because you know haters, they love to poke out when they see a motherfucker winning. They used to do stuff to my cars anyway. We don't need to get into the specifics. I had a few different incidents, and then that was the point where I was like, all right, enough is enough. I'm getting out of here. In fact, I don't know if you can see right through here, there's like a balcony back there. That was a balcony where 9 times out of 10, if I was filming a video and motherfuckers was making noise out here, I would have to come out my balcony and start bugging out to get people to shut up so I could film those original videos, bro. Sometimes it would be just like, you know, and it always felt very much so like a out of control type of situation, in terms of the fact that like I'm about to press record, or I just pressed record on my video, and then a lawnmower starts, or motherfuckers just start making extremely mad loud noise out here. It was always something very weird. I was just like, I don't get it. But this was the original stomping grounds right here. And then it was, like I said, and that's why I always give massive props and shout outs to Naruto, because helicopters, they're like, yo, Fornever's back in the building, we need to surveil this area. Nah, but you know, just in general, the series that got me so much of the success that got me to where I wanted to go was stuff like Naruto. You know what I mean? I'll never forget when I first got my first quote-unquote partnered video, because back then they didn't offer you to be able to make money on your videos immediately. You had to prove your worth, so to speak. So I would, you know, put out massive amounts of videos, and to get ads on them after the fact, after they were successful, then they'll be like, hey, you want to put some ads on there? The first time around that I got one of those was a Naruto video, and I remember I was just ecstatic, because like at first, you know, you do it, you always do it for the love, and then once you find something that you're really passionate about and you really enjoy doing, that's when everything else will follow. That's when all of a sudden the opportunities and the doors will start opening for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So, you know, I did like a ton of videos, and it wasn't until like maybe a handful of months or so within it that I got partnered with my first Naruto impression. And then about a little, maybe a year into it, is when suddenly they offered me monetization for the channel, and that's that I have been trying a few different times, but they finally offered it, and then that's when everything started to go up. But it was a year of consistency, a year of constantly strategizing. How can I make things better? What can I do? Which way can I navigate towards? You know, sometimes having to go back to the drawing board to figure stuff out, and that's okay. Sometimes you got to go back to where it all began to really understand things, you know what I'm saying? You know, revisiting this place, it's kind of crazy. A lot of memories, but then at the same time, every journey has a starting point, and sometimes just not necessarily to look back at the negatives, but look at how far you've come, or just in general where it all began, so that you can know where you're going in the future. Give yourself a little bit of insight. Which route did I not take? Which path did I not walk through? So you can ultimately get to the goals that you're trying to get to.